Welcome to Colledge Facebook Live, a series dedicated to bringing students and families better information about higher education and better access to college admissions. I'm Jenny Umhofer, the owner and founder of Colledge. We are thrilled to welcome you tonight as we discuss the role of demonstrated interest in holistic admissions with admissions veteran Jeremiah Rakowski, Regional Assistant Director of Admissions at American University. For those of you who don't know us yet, Colledge is a private college admissions advisory group. We are a team of experienced admissions professionals who work closely with students and their families anywhere on their path to higher education. Our work helps identify and helps students apply to best fit colleges and ignites their deeper potential in learning. So a couple of little housekeeping notes before we have our panelists join us here. First of all, as our goal is to reach as many members of the community as possible with the information they need, with the information you need, please hit like if you're finding this useful so we know how we're doing. And please feel free to pop any questions into the comments box as we go. We will have time for questions at the end, and I want to encourage all of you to ask your questions that come up, and anything that comes up is perfectly fine. And I can guarantee you, if you have a question, someone else probably has the exact same question. So without further ado, I'm going to invite our panelists to join the stream. First, I want to introduce Kelsey Tarosian, our admissions manager at Colledge. Welcome, Kelsey.
Hi, Jenny.
And next, I'd like to introduce Jeremiah Rakowski, the Regional Assistant Director of Admission for American University. Welcome, Jeremiah.
Good evening, Jenny. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Thank you for being here.
Definitely.
So for those of you who don't know Jeremiah yet, he has been in higher education admissions for 13 years, and 8 of those years at American University in Washington, D.C. Jeremiah is actually American's first and only regional assistant director, and he and his family of 5 moved across the country to Laverne, California about 3 years ago. And he is the recruiter for Southern California and Nevada, so he has a big territory. Jeremiah is also currently on the executive board for the Western Association for College Admission Counseling, also known as WACAC, as the College Fair Chair-elect, and has previously served on the executive board of the Regional Admission Counselors of California, or RAC, as vice chair. He is also one of the nicest, most open admissions officers you could hope for, so definitely don't hesitate to reach out. And if you have any questions about American University, please contact Jeremiah, and we're going to put his contact information in the stream here for you tonight. So without further ado, I will let Kelsey take it away.
Great. Thank you so much, Jenny. So Jeremiah, what a year, right? Oh my gosh. And honestly, like between not being able to visit and then testing this year with SAT testing and ACT testing, or the lack thereof, families just don't know what to do. They need to really know what we know colleges need to make good admissions decisions this year, and how demonstrated interest plays into that. But before we dive into the admissions process and holistic review, I would really love to hear a little bit about American, and what is it about the university that you see as drawing students in year after year?
Yeah, thanks, Kelsey. You're right. It's been a crazy year.
Yeah.
But you know, the good news is, in the recruiting that I've done the last few months, all the students I've talked to, while there is some kind of anxiety about the process and the testing, they seem to be in good spirits and are actually finding that they're able to connect with the colleges really well in this virtual world. And, you know, thank God for technology, because we're sort of equipped for this pandemic and the ability to stay at home and just use our computers. So that's been actually really nice. I feel like I haven't missed a beat with the recruiting, and I feel like I'm able to connect with the students that want to connect. As far as American, you know, American benefits from being in Washington, D.C. first and foremost. I think Washington, D.C. is one of America's greatest cities. It's one of the most cosmopolitan cities, and it provides a lot of opportunities. You know, it's a city that college graduates from all over the country kind of go to for jobs after they graduate. And what's great about American is students come there and they're able to kind of hit the ground running as a freshman and start getting involved in internships and start attending guest lecture series that we may have, or through our Kennedy Political Union, we have guest speakers such as Malala or the Dalai Lama or Prime Minister Justin Trudeau or President Obama 3 different times when I was on campus working there. So I think AU students get really excited about the opportunities that the university provides in and around the city. And our mission statement is to bring students to the university and that want to make meaningful change in their industry. And I think through the research and through the opportunities we provide, our students are able to kind of get right into their industry and make that meaningful change that we're talking about.
Amazing. What an amazing place to study. And DC sounds incredible, but I'm curious, do you have a sense of what it might be like to study there right now?
Well, right now, it's like staying at home in your bed or on your couch because our students are studying virtually. But, you know, similar to Southern California, Washington, D.C. was very similar in terms of how it was impacted by the pandemic and COVID-19. And so it was in the best interest of all the colleges in the region to remain virtual for the fall.
Yeah.
But many students, I know that we had a big uptick of freshmen that chose to live in apartments in and around the Washington, D.C. area so that they could kind of still be in the city and still meet people and experience some of what the city has to offer, even if it's not quite the same, while they take their classes online. The goal hopefully is to be in person in spring, and certainly for seniors that are there right now, the goal would definitely be to have them on campus so they can start experiencing all that Washington, D.C. has to offer.
Yeah, I mean, DC has so much to offer, and it's incredible to study there. And I would love it if so many of my students get excited about DC because they love the pre-professional, opportunities, the access to our political, central nervous system. But they kind of have a hard time sometimes differentiating between the 2 major universities, between George Washington and American University. And I would love it if you could tell me, what's the difference in feel? What's the difference in student experience, or just the difference that you see close up?
Yeah, the first thing I would say is I would never talk badly about any college in the Washington, D.C. There's lots of great colleges there. And of course, George Washington, Georgetown, American, Howard, Catholic, Gallaudet, we overlap applications all the time. And I know that a student that's talking to me is probably also looking at one of those schools, and as they should. But what's cool is we're actually partners academically. All the Washington, D.C. area colleges are part of a consortium similar to the Claremont colleges in Claremont, California. So we actually partner academically. And as a student at American, you can actually take classes at Georgetown or GW or Howard or Gallaudet. And additionally, you can use their resources like the library, and we partner with them with ROTC and other things. So we are partners that way. But as far as choosing one or the other as an undergraduate experience, I would just definitely encourage students to do research on what the students are doing there, what the colleges are known for, because there's differences obviously in size. GW is about twice as large as we are in terms of undergraduate population. And even though we're only miles apart from each other in the same section of the Upper Northwest, we have vastly different campus experiences. American is a 91-acre traditional campus in a private residential neighborhood in the Upper Northwest, only 4 miles from the White House. I've heard the George Washington, Southern California rep talk about how they're only 4 blocks from the White House. And so their experience is a little bit more city feel, similar to an NYU. And students definitely want that lots of students go to George Washington, but there's lots of students that envision being able to have a city experience like Washington, D.C., but also be able to retreat and have that kind of traditional campus experience that they kind of envision, where it's, sporting events, sororities, fraternities, clubs, organizations, walking to class in a sweatpants and sweatshirt, those kind of things. That's definitely AU. But again, you're still in Washington, D.C. and still able to do all the things that GW, Georgetown students and Catholic and Howard students that are closer to the downtown section. We're still in DC, just kind of campus in a private neighborhood.
That's great. That's really helpful. Thank you. So let's dive right into what I know a lot of people are wondering about, but I don't think that any conversation about demonstrated interest can really happen until you frame it with what holistic review actually is. For all of you out there, I'm sure that this is a term that you've heard. It's something that's being discussed a lot right now in light of so many schools, or pretty much all the schools, going test optional. So for those of you who are unfamiliar with this term, holistic review describes the process by which admissions officers, generally speaking across this country, aim to look at the whole student as represented by each and every part of the application packet, painting kind of a picture of who is the student, who might they be, and recognizing the students are certainly more than just their GPA, just their test scores. As a reader, what it means is looking at each part of the application as kind of through a bigger context rather than as disparate parts. Is there anything that you'd like to add to what that definition is?
No, that's pretty spot on. And there's lots of different types of reviewing of applications. I wouldn't say there's one universal way that all colleges and universities read applications, but many of them read their applications holistically. And we believe that a 17 or 18-year-old high school student is more than just what's on their transcript or the standardized test scores that they submit from that Saturday in August or wherever it is. And we're a university like that. And we even go a little bit further and have professional admissions counselors that have specific territories, that recruit in that territory, make relationships with the counselors, get to put themselves face to face with the applicants as often as they can, do the interviews, those kind of things, and then they read the applications. And so, you know, a student applying from LA, you know, maybe it's, you know, New Road School in Santa Monica or something like that. You know, I visit New Roads and I get to know the counselors and they get to know me and I get to know their curriculum and understand the types of school it is. And so I'm able to review a student from New Roads in the context of the environment that they're in. And I understand all those different factors and the kind of environment they have and the curriculum they're offered. And when I read their application, you know, I'm looking at their transcript and test scores, but I also get to look at their activity section and their reading ability. And I get to read the recommendation letters from the counselors that I know and teachers and that kind of stuff. And I put it all together. And for us, we're just trying to find out if we're a good match for that student in terms of what they're looking for in a college experience and what we're known for in terms of what we offer and what our students like to do at our university.
So could you share a little bit more specifically about how holistic review works at American University? It's wildly different. I mean, I know UCLA would say that they practice holistic review, and they certainly do. And Harvey Mudd practices holistic review. And then you've got American. Everybody has their own way of doing it based on a number of factors. So would you share a little bit about what you're looking for?
Yeah, I think you were pretty spot on with your description. For us, essentially, every single part of the application that we require you to submit, you know, that kind of list when you go to our website and it says this is everything that you need to submit to complete your application, all of that is considered when I'm reviewing your application. You know, I'm the type of person that I like to kind of look at academics first. I like to just kind of have an understanding of if they're academically competitive within our pool. But then I dive into the background of where the student lives, where they go to school. I read more about the school if I'm not as familiar. I read their writing pieces. I look at their activity section. And I do want to see a student that's heavily involved because that's a good match for American. Our students at our university are very busy. And then the demonstrated interest piece that we talk about, that's important to us. I'll go back to the New Roads School. If I have a student from New Roads that's applying, you know, typically from a school like that, I may get 6 to 10 applications every year.
Right.
And I'll visit that school. I'll attend a college fair at that school. They often have events. I'll host regional info sessions in downtown LA, not far from where their school is in Santa Monica. And so I'm providing those students lots of opportunities to connect with me and to learn more about American. And so the demonstrated interest piece for us, we use it because it allows us to kind of gauge how interested a student really might be in our university. And it doesn't tell us everything, but a student that interviews with me, goes to my regional info session, goes to my visit when I visit their school, emails with me a few times, has a phone call with me and their parents or whoever's helping them make the decision about college, it shows to me that they're willing to take their precious time and show interest, but also learn more about American to make sure it is a good school for them. And if ultimately they're admitted that it'd be a place they want to be in. And so on the opposite end for us, when we're looking at a school like New Roads and I get 10 applications and there's 3 students at New Roads that have done all those things that I just described and really gone out of their way to connect with us, and the other 7 applicants I don't really meet and I don't really have a face to the name, you know, being a selective institution where we admit less students than we get for applications, we may give more preference to the student that's gone out of their way to show us a little bit more love in the process, because we feel like we're giving a student the opportunity to attend our school that would be very excited about that opportunity and would be more likely to take us up on that offer. It's sort of a guessing game for us selective institutions when we send out our admits. When we admit about 38% of our applicants and we send those decisions out, we're hoping that we admit the right 38%, right? The ones that are going to actually come to us in a large percentage and actually be able to help us fill our class.
Yeah. So demonstrated interest, just to kind of clarify that for anybody watching, is the way in which you're showing in a tangible way to an institution that you are interested in them, whether that is by attending events, whether it's by reaching out to Jeremiah, and it's tracked at some schools and used at some schools and not so much at others. And I invited Jeremiah tonight. One of the reasons I wanted to talk to you is because I know demonstrated interest is so important at American. So that piece of, you know, what you're showing the institution is that you are likely to go if they admit you, which makes it they're making a bet on you, that they, first of all, do they want to put their stamp on you? Are you going to use their degree well? In American University's case, are you a student who's aligned with that mission? Are you somebody who wants to go make positive change? And then are you showing American that you will go if admitted, or that you'll at least consider it, so that they know that they're really finding those best fit students?
And I would also add that not every college uses demonstrated interest. Many don't. And so you may be applying to 10 colleges. You can ask all 10 of those colleges, whoever it is. Maybe it's a rep like me that covers your high school or your region, or it's maybe the general email and you've got to email and get an email back from them. But you can ask them, is demonstrated interest important to you? And if so, you know, what is the best ways that I can show that? And you may get some responses where that's not important to us. We'd rather just take a look at your academics, test scores, and your writing ability. And some schools may reply back like mine and give you a kind of more detailed answer of what we expect in terms of demonstrated interest, if that's something you're interested in doing. It's not required. You can apply to American without showing any interest at all, and it happens all the time. I would say a majority of the applicants from my region I never meet in any capacity. But those that I do, it's really nice to have a face to the name, or it's really nice to have additional personality to what happens on applications, because it's not easy to show those things through a computer. But if you apply to 10 schools and 3 of them tell you demonstrated interest is important to you, in my opinion, demonstrated interest should be a part of your application process to those 3 schools that have told you it's important, because those schools are telling you it's a part of their review process. So kind of behind the scenes when they're reviewing their application, they're thinking about how much you've connected with them. So you should show that kind of effort into those 3 schools. And again, by asking those 10 schools, you can know where to put your time.
Absolutely.
You don't have to do it to all 10.
Yeah, and so as a reader, as a regional admissions reader, and obviously as a regional admissions director, how does that change your read when you've met a student? Like, can you give me an example of what it might tell you about a student, or how it might change the conversations around that student when you're going into making admissions decisions?
Yeah, like I said, sometimes it's hard to feel the energy of a student through an application. And I've heard it time and time again over the years from students that they just have a hard time writing about themselves, or just explaining how passionate or impactful this particular activity or whatever it is that they're involved in means to them. And so sometimes when I interview a student and I get to sit down with them face to face and they're like, hey, I wasn't able to get involved in much because I'm a competitive equestrian rider, but like, that's super important to me. Like, it's a passion of mine. I've been doing it since I was 5. I'm all about horses. Every day on the weekend, all I can think about is going to be with my horse and whatever. And so it's limiting what they put on their resume. And I can picture that conversation and the smile on their face and how they light up talking about their horse and how it's limited them. Or I picture the student that says, I have a lot of at-home responsibilities. My parents work late, and so I help cook and clean, and I help my siblings with homework. And I understand kind of that story. It in a way, it helps for students to be able to tell me in their own words exactly what they want me to know about them. And I give them that opportunity. I say to them, you know, if I never got to meet you and I was reading your application, what's one area of your application or something about you that I might see in the application that you don't want me to overlook, or that you would want me to know how important that is to you? And it gives them a chance to tell me that. And it's not easy for every student. And so that's how it is. And again, you don't have to show demonstrated interest to apply to my university, but it is nice, and it can be a useful tool for you as an applicant to be able to explain it better if you feel like using your words is a better form of explaining yourself than writing it out on paper or computer.
Absolutely. And one of the other things that can happen, from what I understand, is when they meet with you, then you have the power to, like, you know, you get to know them, and then you have more of a leg to stand on if you want to really advocate for that student when it comes to making those, you know, those like last decisions in the big bubble, in the big gray area of students who are admissible, but not quite obvious yeses or nos.
That's absolutely true. I tell students that I meet all the time that get to know me. I'm the reader of your applications. I make a majority of the decisions in my territory, and I can be your best friend in this process. If you really are interested in American and you'd like to see an admit from this university to be able to consider coming here, I'm the one that you want to tell that to, because I'm reading the application and I'm the one that can advocate for you. There's all kinds of things that I can do on my end where I can say that this student's super high interest or their top choice, or I can save them so that I can write an extra explanation to my leadership team and say, hey, I've met Jeff. He's told me face-to-face, this is where he wants to go. He would have applied early decision if not for concern about the finances, those kind of things. And so not every school has someone like me. Sometimes it's outside readers and stuff, but there are a lot of schools where it's someone like me. You know, my regional network, Jenny doing my introduction, the Regional Admissions Counselors of California, there's over 150 full-time counselors that work for over 120 out-of-state colleges that live full-time in Southern California, all of California. And those people read the apps, they do the recruitment travel, they're people that you can meet on a face-to-face basis when in a normal world. And so you gotta utilize folks like us, because we're human and we like making human connections. We wanna remember and we wanna help people. That's, I heard, you know, one of a former colleague that worked with me in the Regional Admissions of Counselors of California, Ed Devine, he used to say, they call it an office of admissions because we want to admit people. We're not an office of denying. You know, right. We genuinely want to admit more people than we deny, but we can't because of space and stuff. So
yeah. I think that message is so important, the humanization of admissions officers. And it's good for students to know that often the people who are coming to their high schools and visiting them are the people who are going to read their specific application. So it's worthwhile to go to those visits. It's worthwhile to get to know those people. So Jeremiah, I would love to hear if do you have an example of an application that really stood out to you? That would be very helpful.
Yeah. So I had one student, unfortunately, he didn't end up coming to my university. But he did show all that demonstrated interest, and he also had a great application that matched like all the things that he told me. He was one that made me do a little bit of extra research because I didn't know the answer. He wanted to know if we had a student organized EMT service, because he was an EMT himself, and he volunteered at the local Santa Monica Fire Department station near him, and he wanted to get into medicine, and he wanted to continue to be a student EMT at whatever college he went to. And all of that like made sense because he told me in person and he kind of saw me at all the different places and opportunities that he could. But then he did a good job of kind of explaining that in the application and showing that through the activities that he was involved in. And he took the time to use the additional information section of the Common App, which is widely underused. There's a whole nother section where you can write an additional essay or explain something in your own words, whatever it is. And he used that to explain just how passionate he was about medicine and how early he discovered that, but how he's continued to find professional experiences while in high school to support that interest and foster that interest. And it was just really nice to see it all kind of come together through my holistic review and be like, yeah, this is spot on. Like, he said this in person. It's all through his activities. It's all through his writing pieces. It lines up with the major he's interested in. And so for me, it was just nice to kind of have a clear picture and understanding of why he was looking at my university, what he was hoping to do there, with the research, with getting involved, with doing internships in hospitals, that kind of stuff. And that's something that I'm always looking for. I'm trying to envision why that applicant was interested in American and how they're looking to utilize what we're known for and what we offer them, you know?
Yeah.
And so it's nice when a student's able to kind of make that clear.
Yeah. And it sounds like the consistency, or like being able to see that everything that he showed on his application, everything that he had chosen in high school to spend his time doing, was connected somehow to who he was as a person.
Yeah, and it worked for him. And I also recognize lots of 16, 17, and 18-year-olds have no clue what they want to do.
Right.
And honestly, I went through this with my own daughter, who's a junior in college herself. She had no idea what the ideal fit, and we use that word fit all the time in college search. Yeah. She had no idea what the perfect fit was for her for college, because in her life, the ideal fit was the household that she was brought up in and everything that we provided her, right? And so outside of that, she was like, I don't know what I need on my own. Right. And so that's really hard to vocalize or even think about, and that's okay. I just think you need to, you just have to do more research, I think, and read more about what the students do and try to picture whether that's something you'd like to do in your college experience, and try to just maybe visualize yourself utilizing what the student body at that current college or institution is doing in large percentages.
Yeah, wonderful. So one other thing I really would love to ask you is actually about test optional. So American has been test optional for some time. A lot of families are struggling with that. They kind of don't believe it, or they think that, if it comes down to two students and one of them has scores and the other one doesn't, the edge is definitely going to go to the student with scores. And as a school that's been practicing test optional for some time, would you help us understand the role of testing in a test optional read?
Yeah, so you're right. According to fairtest.org, it's almost 3/4 of four-year institutions in the nation this year are test optional for this fall 2021 year because of COVID-19 and the impact it has on seniors and their ability to take the test, or even just the environment that they took the test in impacted their scores. American has been test optional since 2011, like you said, for a long time. So we almost have a decade run of reviewing applicants without needing to see standardized test scores and determining whether they will be able to academically succeed on our campus. And going back all the way to the holistic admissions part, the beauty of that is that we have so many other things we can look at, like what the teacher says about you, their work ethic in their classroom. If they're struggling in a subject, do they come in for office hours or ask for additional help? We learn more just about their habits in general, whether they're timely with their homework and that kind of meeting deadlines. We get to look at their writing ability. We look, the transcript is so much more than just the GPA that you have. It's freshman year to junior year or freshman year to senior year. It's the trend. Is it positive? Like, it's understandable when you struggle your first semester freshman year, because it's a big change from maybe your smaller 8th grade class to a much larger environment with a lot of new faces, a new learning environment with more homework. And maybe you have a C or a D in a couple of classes your freshman year, but how do you respond? Do you bounce back and do you evolve as a academic student and get better and learn better time management? Do you start feeling more confident that you start challenging yourself and taking some of the harder courses like honors, AP if they offer them, or international baccalaureate classes, or maybe even are dual enrolled at your local community college or a 4-year college near you? So all these different things in the holistic review, we can look at all that and we feel very confident that we can determine academic success at our university without needing to see those standardized scores. Because frankly, not all standardized test scores are created equal. There's so many other factors that go into that. Some students come from a family where they're able to get thousands of dollars of test prep help. And some go to a school where the counselors have a small caseload of only maybe 50 students that they're working with, and they're able to give them good practice tips and give them, stay on top of them with studying and stuff like that. Some come from a household where a parent or both parents, and including grandparents or even siblings, went to college themselves and are college educated. So they know what goes into the college experience. They can tell you more about testing and helping you understand the college process. Some students don't have that. They have those responsibilities at home that I talked about earlier. And so, test scores aren't created equal. And I've heard just this year that some families have been sending their son or daughter to Texas or Utah or all the way to Connecticut to take the test. And for me, with so many colleges, including here in California, the Cal States and the UC saying they're willing to admit the test scores for this year and for even future years, they're telling you it's okay to not take those scores and that we're feeling very confident in reviewing you without them. And I can say that American University partnered with the University of Chicago, which is one of the nation's most selective test optional schools. We did trainings for lots of colleges this summer, hosted a series of webinars to tell them how to become test optional, things that they need to consider, the conversations they need to have with their staff, with their marketing department, with the academic side. And I know that all these colleges that have went test optional have done their due diligence and have done their research to figure out how it's going to work. I also trust that they're going to give their reviewers of their applications time to kind of gauge how the applications look and what they're noticing. And since it's going to be different from what they're used to, they're going to have kind of calibration check marks, and they're going to get together and say, is it different? Are we noticing different trends? Do we have to adjust? And so I think you should feel confident. If a school is telling you that they absolutely are confident in you applying test optional, then you should feel confident in that. And it can be different at every school.
Yeah.
So like at American, we've been doing it long enough that there is no detriment to applying to my school. You're still considered for merit scholarships. If you apply for honors or any other specialty program, you're still considered for that. There's no difference in the acceptance rate between a test optional student and a student that submits standardized test scores, but that may not be the case at every school. So you should ask those same questions at all these different schools that you're applying to.
Wonderful. That's really helpful. I think that final, piece of advice just in general of applying with confidence and trusting that these institutions are institutions that are doing their best by you, and they're trying to be fair, and they want to see the real person. So thank you so much for all of your insights. And I'm going to go ahead, and we're almost at time, but if everybody can, or we are past time, if everybody can bear with us, we want to entertain some questions, and I'm going to go ahead and invite Jenny back to the stream to facilitate that. Hi, Jenny.
Hi, Kelsey. Thank you so much, Jeremiah. I find this work to be so fascinating after many years on the college admission side and now working as a private advisor for students and families. I never feel like I get enough. And what you just shared tonight was so incredibly helpful for families and students, especially around the test optional and demonstrated interest and holistic admissions. And I learned something new. Wow, I had no idea that all the DC colleges are part of a consortium.
Yeah, it's really
I know.
That's incredible.
I'll use an example. George Washington, American, and Georgetown, we're all top 10 in the nation in the foreign affairs, international studies, international relations realm. And it can be tough choosing between those schools. And one of the things I say, I was like, look, if you end up at any of the three of us, if there's a professor that's doing research in a particular area of that field that you're interested in at Georgetown or GW or American, you can take a class with that professor, and you don't have to worry about the cost because you're just going to keep paying the same university you're attending, and we'll pay them through our consortium. So
that's incredible.
Really, yeah.
And I think there's probably a lot of students right now that are eager and interested in being in a place like Washington, D.C.
Right.
And studying, a whole host of different academic areas. But I have a couple of questions that have been coming up a lot. And Kelsey, let me know if there's any other questions coming in the feed.
Yeah.
I know there are a lot of families who are concerned about the costs of college right now. And so I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about the merit aid options that American offers.
Yeah, so for American, there's kind of two sides of the financial equation. There's merit scholarships and there's need-based aid and kind of the general financial package that we offer you. Every applicant that applies to my university is automatically considered for a merit scholarship. And typically it's between the top 30 and 40% of our admitted students that receive a merit scholarship. So it's very selective. If you're looking at our middle 50%, it's definitely top ends and above that are in the competitive range. As far as the need-based side, we ask families to complete both the FAFSA and the CSS profile. The FAFSA, as most people know, is a federal form, and you can find out what you qualify for just by completing the FAFSA. It's the same at every school. The CSS profile, a lot of private institutions like ours have you complete that because we ask a few more questions about finances that it isn't included in the FAFSA. And we do that because we, I guess, being an expensive school, also have a fairly large endowment and have a lot of money that we can offer ourselves that not every state college could offer. And so we review your family for additional need, and we're a university that meets 100% of demonstrated financial needs. So we can come on top and offer what we call an AU grant, which is additional money that does not need to be paid back to help your family pay for school. So that's, it's another reason why don't necessarily let cost, just looking at it, stop you from applying to school, because oftentimes those really expensive schools can offer more money and can kind of close that gap and make it more affordable. And that's definitely something I've seen happen a lot of at American.
That's wonderful. 100% of demonstrated need. That's really important.
Sorry, we just had a question come in from the stream, and I'd love to jump on this. I have a parent wondering what is the best way to get student life information from students during these strange times with the pandemic? It's a great question.
You know what's cool is one of the benefits that I've seen come out of this virtual world is every department, every college or school that makes up my university seems to be more willing to talk to prospective families than they used to be. It used to be in the past, we have an admissions office, they can handle all these questions, kind of like the front line of defense. And then if we really need to come in because they're really pressing to talk to our College of Arts and Sciences, we'll find a faculty member or an advisor or something that can help you out. And it's the same with the student ambassadors. But in this virtual world, we've actually had the different colleges and schools and the ambassador team and stuff reach out to us and say, hey, we have the bandwidth to be able to take on some webinars or have some Zoom meetings or exchange emails. And I've noticed that a lot with my regional network and other folks I know in the industry. So oftentimes you could just reach out to either the person that covers your high school or territory and say, I'd like to connect with either an alumni or a student ambassador or maybe the business school. Can you point me in the right direction? And we can definitely kind of be that conduit to help give you the appropriate contact information. So I would just say reach out, ask for who you're looking to talk to, and most of us will do our best to get you connected with them.
That's great advice. We have another one, actually. I have I think a student asking during interviews, what are good questions for a student to ask to show their interest to a school? Great question.
That's a good question. So there are different types of interviews too. That's important to know. There are many schools that practice evaluative interviews, and there's many schools like mine that practice non-evaluative interviews. In a non-evaluative interview, what that means is it's not when Jenny comes to interview with me, I'm not saying, oh, Jenny's not a good fit for American. She showed I'm not doing that. I'm using it to offer demonstrated interest and give the student an opportunity to ask questions face-to-face and tell me more about them. Whereas some schools, like since we're Washington, D.C., Georgetown practices evaluative interviews with alumni and some of their staff, and it's an important part of their review process. So you have to know the difference at the different schools you're applying to. But, if you were just meeting with me, I guess just be honest. What are you interested in knowing about that school? If it's more about the student body, ask about that. Or if you're really kind of focused on the outcomes, and if I go to your school for business, how are you going to help me? Find jobs. What's your alumni connection? What about opportunities while I'm there as an undergraduate to do research or do internships? Think about what's important to you, what you're looking for in a college experience, and ask those questions. I don't think there's any right or wrong answers. I've been asked some really cool question. I got one of the coolest questions I've ever been asked in this industry this year, which was, if you could describe the American University student body as a TV show, what would it be? Or
What did you say?
I went with Parks and Recreation. Honestly, I've always, whether it's right or not, this is right or wrong, this has been the way I've described AU students. AU students are kind of like the quirky, smart students in the upper Northwest that are really busy.
Interesting.
Looking to make change in their industry. Like, they really do kind of embody our mission statement that way. And in Parks and Rec, we have a great character in Leslie Knope, who is like a very smart, quirky person, but also has an important position, and she really wants to make meaningful change in her surrounding Pawnee area. And so that was my answer. That was immediately what came up. And I'm not even joking, it was the students' favorite TV show. So
I love that. I have to watch that show now.
It was like, oh my God, that's crazy. That's my favorite show. My ringtone on my phone is The Office. And so I'm kind of an Office fan versus the Parks and Rec team, but you know, we had a good conversation about that.
I've got another student question for us. We're getting lots of questions. I love that. What kinds of points work for supplemental essays for colleges in DC in general? So topics and stuff.
Well, I guess in general, if the question is why so-and-so school, one thing, a good litmus test to determine if your answer is good is think about other schools in that area. And if you could just insert that name of a different school to your answer, then it's probably a little too general or vague. And we get a lot of them. You know, we get a lot of Washington, D.C., and we get a lot of politics. And you could say the same about Catholic or Howard or Gallaudet or American or GW or Georgetown. So that's a little bit too general. I hope that when you're answering questions about the supplement, that you can actually picture what our students do, what we're known for as a university, and try to determine if that appeals to you or not, and that those are the things that you want to do in your school. And so say it can be as general as during my research at American, I saw that 90% of students complete at least one internship and 70% study abroad. Those were the two things that I want to do most in my college experience. And since you guys really embody that, and that's what your students do in large percentages, that's the kind of school I want to go to. And that seems genuine to me.
So I'm curious, Jeremiah, if you can tell us a little bit about how to schedule an interview with you, if a student is interested in doing that.
Our website's a good spot, but also you could just email me. I know you've been sharing different links in my email. In most instances, even schools like UCLA that have a lot of reps, there is probably a general email or a general phone number or a contact list that divvies it up between the folks that cover certain high schools or counties or regions of states or whatever. You can send an email and just let them know that you're interested in connecting with someone or the appropriate person, whatever language you want to use. And with me, I cover Southern California, Nevada. You could say, hey, Jeremiah, I'm interested in American. I'd like to learn more. I'm also interested in interviewing, and I'll send you the link on how to sign up and talk to you about other things you can do.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Well, thank you so much, all of you, for attending tonight. I want to make sure that those of you are getting access to our free, wonderful community resources. So please be sure to keep following us on Facebook. We are actually planning the next year, and although this is our last live stream in this format, we will be having more in the coming year, so stay tuned. And if you feel like this access to this free resource has been valuable, please consider sharing your kind words with others on our Yelp channel. I'm going to pop in the link right now so you can do that. And also, we want to let you know about what our next free event that's coming up. This is actually a different type of an event. It's actually for students and parents. Our next webinar is called UC Application Tips and Tricks, and it's going to be next Sunday night, October 25th at 6 p.m. Pacific time. For all of you who are applying to the UC, even one UC school, you don't want to miss this one, because we're going to be combing through the entire UC application together. And so to make sure that you don't miss anything. So I'm going to put the link to sign up for that in our chat as well. So, and feel free to share that with anyone that you know of who's applying to the UC system this year who might benefit from this. And then for, let's see, for any of you who want to watch our previous talks, you can also find our archives in the link I'm going to put in the chat box below too. Sorry to put so many comments in here, but we just want to give you as many free resources as possible so we can meet as many people's needs as possible during this time. We had, in our archives, we had some live chats with Pomona College and CU Boulder and UCLA and University of Oregon and many, many more. So please feel free to share those also with your friends in the community. And then finally, I'm going to put Jeremiah's contact information in the comments below so you can reach out to him directly. Don't hesitate to do so because Jeremiah is an incredible resource for American University, and you can get a lot of insight, I think, if you can reach out and take those first steps with him.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Jenny. And I just want to say, you know, as a group that is really trying to reach as many families, as many students as we can to provide more information, better access to college, I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart, Jeremiah, for joining us tonight, for being our very last guest, and for sharing your care for this work, your thoughtfulness, and really for letting us like see through your eyes for an evening and understand a little bit more deeply what it's like on the other side of the desk.
Yeah, definitely. It was really eye-opening for me 3 years ago for my own daughter to go through this process and to see it from the parent perspective. And I learned a lot of things, and mostly that we put these kids through a lot of stress and that there's a lot to know. You know, I'd been in the industry for a lot of years, and my wife was like, if it wasn't for you, we would have been lost. We wouldn't even know what direction. And so the thing I'd like to say is just that there's so many people like us for every college and university that are willing to help and love to answer questions, are very passionate about us, and we're humans. And so just reach out, ask questions, and let them know that you're not confident in this process and that you have a lot of questions. And I guarantee you'll be received with open arms, and we'll happily answer your questions. And that's what we like to do. You know, most things, we don't know if you need help unless you reach out and ask us, and we are here to help.
It's such great advice, and it's really so true. The people who are in this industry, everybody, from ourselves all the way to admissions officers at colleges to college counselors even, they are in this industry because they care, because they want to help. And I want to let anybody watching know that, you know, if you feel like you might need more information, and most of you do, even if you just want to talk, the first step for us is just a call, just a phone call. We'd be more than happy to talk to you about your specific situation, what to think about. Even just what to think about can be hugely helpful, because as Jeremiah was kind of hinting at, you can't know what you don't know. And then if beyond that you want more help, great. If not, then great. We just want to help as many people as we can. So I'm going to go ahead and pop the link to reach out to us in the comments box below, and we hope that we hear from you. We hope that we can help. And even if it's just, hey, we'd like this kind of resource, we would love to hear about that so that we can keep expanding on our offerings and reaching more people in the community.
Well, thank you so much, Jeremiah, and thank you, Kelsey. This has been very, very eye-opening, and we really appreciate you tuning in tonight. And stay tuned for our next upcoming events, and stay engaged.
Thank you so much. Best of luck to everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a great night.